Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started here today on our panel. Uh, Today, our discussion is going to be how we finance the future of our infrastructure, the system that protects us through storms, keeps our neighborhoods dry, and powers our homes. Specifically, we focus on three pillars, and that's energy, coastal restoration, and stormwater management. From past and Katrina, we've done a lot of work in our levees, coastal protections, and green infrastructure projects, renewable energy, and also our resilient hub planning. But our emphasis continues on climate threats that are accelerating and the funding needs for outsourcing public dollars. We've done a lot of work in our Office of Resilience and Sustainability, a lot of work working with our partners at Sewer and Water Board, but we need to do more. With climate change and sea levels rising, we have to make sure that we can fortify this city and continue to grow and strengthen it as we go. So today, I've got some distinguished guests here to talk about these efforts. And firstly, I'd like to call to the stage Amanda Moore, Gulf Program Senior Director for the National Wildlife Federation. Yes. Secondly, Logan Atkins Burke, who's the Executive Director, Alliance for Affordable Energy. I also like to call to the stage Mr. Steve Nelson, good friend of mine, General Superintendent, Sewer and Water Board, City of New Orleans. And Colonel Scotty Auten, the man with the biggest job in the room, 66th Commander and District Engineer, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, New Orleans District. My name is Joe Threat. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of New Orleans, newly promoted. I've been with the city. I came with the Landrieu administration, with the Latoya Cantrell administration after the Landrieu administration in May of 2018. My job is really to work all the infrastructure in the city, make sure we have federal dollars that support this entity. And lastly, I'd like to call to the stage Jessica Dandridge, Executive Director. I work with her a lot at the Water Collaborative. And it's her birthday today. How about that? We're going to get started, and like I say, my background, I've been with the city since 2018. I lost everything I had in Katrina, and a lot of people, Katrina really punched us in the nose. You talk about a 1-2 punch, it was 1, 2, 3, 4 for me because it was Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Ike. And during that period, the last part of 2005, we had a lot of experiences that really changed our lives. I came here on orders, my last set of orders in the Marines. Thought I would come here for 3 years, do my orders, and leave. And really, Katrina made me a lifetime resident because I had a challenge and an impulse to stay and help this community. I got called back by a good friend of mine in the Marine Corps, Tony Russell. He's here in the audience, and he was at that time the federal coordinating officer for FEMA. I came in as chief of staff and got a hoodwink from Tony when he ran the Region 6, and he said, "Joe, you're the executive director of Louisiana Recovery Office." So I took over that job, and from 2009 to 12, basically kickstart the recovery to rebuild this city from scratch. And it was a big job because nothing was here, right? Okay, today what I want to do is start off with one of my first questions to the audience, and that is to Amanda. What are the biggest wins in restoration so far, and how can philanthropy or private capital help accelerate projects alongside the state's coastal master plan?
All right. Thank you. And it's an honor to be here today. There were a lot of lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina about our coast. And probably most notably, and a big game changer for the state and investment in the state was the founding of the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, or the CPRA. This was an agency that was created out of the lessons learned from Katrina and Rita, and it really elevated and prioritized the coast for the state. And really out of the gate in 2007, they came out with their first coastal master plan. And the coastal master plan has been a game changer for Louisiana, and a lot of the big wins since Katrina are because that master plan is in place. The master plan has allowed the state to garner tens of billions of dollars because it is a science-based, public-informed, and forward-thinking plan. It has earned a lot of investment from the government, most notably, but also private capital and philanthropy, because there's been a lot of confidence in Louisiana and the investments that folks are making in our coastal program. It is a model. So many other states look at Louisiana and they want to know, how can we do this? How can we bring in this funding? How can we build this confidence and have this success in our coastal program? Every state in the Gulf and up the Atlantic, and several states up the Atlantic seaboard look to Louisiana since Katrina for how to restore and protect their coast and communities in the face of climate change. So folks like me, I am the nonprofit sector. Our team, there's been a lot of investment from foundations in Louisiana's coast, and we've really helped the CPRA through bolstering, filling in gaps in science and helping bolster their public outreach and making sure the community is informed and that this coastal program is publicly informed. We help with policy, and we help with communicating to the public and making sure that people know why this work is important. There's been some amazing wins for the coast, huge restoration projects, hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into restoration projects that are now protecting and helping the city of New Orleans to be safer and more resilient. And these are areas like the New Orleans East Land Bridge, the Biloxi Marsh down in St. Bernard, because coastal restoration doesn't stop in Orleans. You have to have our coastal friend, our neighboring parishes restored as well. And Central Wetlands Unit, the Lower Ninth Ward, there's a lot of innovative work being done. There's like very far to go. And I want to talk a little bit about risk that we're facing today, because I don't think that we can talk about at the 20th anniversary of Katrina in New Orleans and not talk about the progress that we've made and what is at risk today. We have actually seen in recent years some alarming shifts from the Coastal Master Plan. The cancellation of the Mid-Barataria sediment diversion. This project was foundational to the coastal program, and it was in construction after over a decade of research, and it was stopped in its tracks by Governor Landry. And this is something folks should be paying attention to, because we have to maintain the integrity of the master plan process if we want to maintain a successful coastal program and have a more resilient future for this region. We have to use all the tools in the toolbox, but the river built where we're sitting today, right? And we know that the river is one of the best shots we have, and using the river and reconnecting it to the delta and the rest and restoring the estuaries is the best thing we can do. Best shot that we have, and one of the most important tools for restoring the coast. And then I want to wrap up and talk a little about the Mississippi River Gulf Outlet, which played a really significant role during Hurricane Katrina. Some of the most catastrophic flood damage came from the levee breaches all along this navigation channel that runs south of New Orleans, right up to the port of New Orleans. And it took until the catastrophe of Katrina for Congress to say, let's close the channel, and they mandated that the government restore the wetlands. They mitigate the damages that were done, it destroyed tens of thousands of acres of wetlands, and it damaged and degraded over 1 million acres of wetlands surrounding the greater New Orleans area. So this is a massive issue that needs to be addressed, and we still have not seen the federal government actually implement projects that are in the plan to restore the damage from the Mr. Go. So that's something that we'll be working with the Corps, and we know that the community cares a lot about this, and we want to see this restoration elevated. We want to see the urgency behind it that it deserves, and we want to see the community informed and partnered with moving ahead. And so
Yeah,
we're
thank
happy
you
to
so
have the
much,
Colonel here.
Amanda. And how long you been in your capacity over at the National Wildlife Federation?
17 years.
17 years.
Working,
Wow.
came in the lower 9. I worked a lot in the lower 9 in St. Bernard after Katrina, and you don't do that and not be forever changed. So
Right, and I think next I want to segue over to the Colonel. Welcome aboard. The Corps builds billion-dollar systems, but sustaining them requires local and non-federal match. Where do you see the financing gaps and how cities and investors step in? And with that, Colonel, give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. So I'm Colonel Scotty Otan. I'm the 66th Commander of the New Orleans District. I've been in the seat about 3 weeks. So as I was telling Steve, though, that in South Louisiana, that's dog ears. And so it's a great team, it's good people, and it's a really, really meaningful mission. And so there's, it's complex, but it's valuable, and we've got some really great teammates focused on it. To your question, Joe, I think it's a great discussion, and it's one that I've really talked with my team and our partners about as we come on board. And as you look at the cost of doing business, even here in the last 5 years, it's gone up quite a bit. And so how do we deliver such a complex program and get the most value for the people of South Louisiana? And it's something that we have, long-standing conversations about, to be, one, good stewards of the federal dollars, but two, make sure we've partnered in a way that is aligned. And really kind of the way that I've wrapped my head around that is, I think there's two major things that I've seen. I will say I'm from South Louisiana. I understand, kind of the complexity down here. The Corps may or may not have been a little more difficult to deal with pre-Katrina. I can appreciate that, but I would tell you, coming out of Katrina, some significant lessons learned within the organization. I think first and foremost, it recognized it had to be a learning organization. It had to look at what happened and how do we grow out of that. That's something that we can see tangibly in front of us with the system of systems that exists. But I think the more important one is the importance of the partnerships. And the Corps has to exist as a partner, a federal partner, with the state, with the parishes, the boards, and even the NGOs. I think that's what I've really taken away is the importance of those partnerships. So we may not agree on, well, let me just say this. We should agree on where we're going. We may not agree how we get there, but good partners can have honest conversations with each other on how do we best apply the engineering and the math and the science so that we get the most out of those dollars. And I think that's what good partners do. And so what I've seen is that the state with CPRA and DTOD and some of our other federal partners that at the state level that work on some of those things, all the way down to the parishes and the levy boards and the NGOs, they've all gotten better. I think with those partnerships, we've gotten better ourselves with each other and how we work together. And what I've seen is each of those have a clear and concise list of priorities of what they want to work on. And what that allows us to do is find where our priorities align. And if we can find where we both have similar priorities, then we can maximize dollars. And it allows us to use our federal, our state, our local dollars in a more efficient manner. And I think that's how we really do this, because otherwise, if we're disjointed, we're going to be spending a lot of money and we won't find those common occurrences. We've worked great with CPRA and their coastal master plan. I think there's a lot of really good benefits moving forward as we work to align that capability. Mr. Go is a great example as we sign the design agreement with CPRA going forward so that we can coordinate how we want to move forward and allow the NGOs and some of the local constituents and parishes to provide feedback. And I think that's where the strength of that is. Another great example, we have Sewage and Water Board, right? And so as we look to the future and we talk about SELA and work we've already done and work we will continue to do, And that's that opportunity that we talk about where when we have limited federal dollars, how do we make the biggest impact for the community? And it's really working with those agencies and so that we can align our priorities and mitigate risk. And I think that speaks to the last point there, just to highlight, you know, we have built a world-renowned system in New Orleans. I will tell you, whether you know it or not, it's the envy of the world. I just left the Netherlands, which is a world leader in water management, and they talk about not only the Hisders, but the entire system of South Louisiana with awe, right? Now, we learned a lot from them, and we implemented a lot of those lessons learned, but it really is a great system. There's still residual risk. There's resists that exist on each of those entities that I talked about, and there's still risks that exist with the individuals, right? And we can't, I would hate to let anyone leave here think the system's so good that there should be complacency and full trust, right? So it's built on a system of modeling, but Mother Nature has been proven to throw us a right hook every now and then. And so that residual risk is really important. And as you talk, please be aware about all these issues that the panelist brings up, because your voice can absolutely make an impact as we work through our state and federal representatives to get money to complete the things that we talk about. So thank you, Joe, for that.
Oh, thank you so much, Colonel. And hey, thank God for the Corps engineers. Tony Russell, I told you, was a federal coordinating officer, my boss, when I took over the Louisiana Recovery Office, and Department of Homeland Security and FEMA had pre-scripted contracts in place, ready to go on the shelf. One of them is the Corps engineers. So when you talk about a heavy lift, Katrina, when I've got a card here that said what happened to all that trash and debris in New Orleans East, when you talk about a heavy lift, that's who the federal government depends on. One of those entities is the Corps engineers. Another one is Coast Guard. When you talk about search and rescue efforts after Katrina, when you talk about the Corps coming in, giving us those structural evaluation and bringing heavy equipment into different areas, that's who we lean on. So I appreciate you being here, Colonel. I look forward to our future partnerships with the city of New Orleans in my capacity. Next, I want to talk to Logan. Logan's here from Alliance of Affordable Energy. And Logan, the question I have for you is, how do we finance the clean energy transition in a way that ensures equity and affordability for our residents? And with that, give us a little bit about your background.
How about now? Hi, I'm Logan Burke. I'm the Executive Director for the Alliance for Affordable Energy. We are a consumer and environmental advocate working on energy, largely the power sector across Louisiana. That means that we advocate to make sure that, or try to make sure that people can keep the lights on, and that the system that we use to keep the lights on is one that we can sustain, that not only that we can sustain, but that can sustain us for the future. So the first thing that I have to say is, before or as we talk about finance, we also have to talk about why we are all sitting here and why we're talking about climate change. And we can't stop, we have to stop throwing fuel on that fire. We have to acknowledge that the reason that sea levels are rising and that we are all in danger is the fossil fuel industry. We just have to acknowledge it, right? We then have to think about who is responsible and who is holding the costs. Let's acknowledge that if we are going to stay in New Orleans, let's acknowledge that if we are going to live here and thrive here, and by we, I mean the communities who are from here, who have built this place and made it special, we have to admit that the economic system right now is not working for a lot of people. A lot of people can already not pay their utility bills, and as a result of some federal action that's been happening since January, there's a train coming for a lot of families who are already struggling to keep the lights on. So, solutions. We need to be investing in our housing. We absolutely need to be able to keep people in their homes, both on an everyday, and then also in extreme heat and extreme cold, and before, during, and after the kinds of storms that people ride out here in New Orleans. There are a number of ways that we can begin to fund that. One of the ways is to continue to invest through utility programs, which we have. If you've heard of Energy Smart, it is a really good program that the utility here in New Orleans runs at the direction of the City Council. That is a program that helps anybody, whether you are a low-income resident, a renter, a business, invest in weatherizing and improving the efficiency of your homes and operations to reduce your bills and to reduce the climate impacts of our energy system. So those are really important. But another thing that I think is interesting, so obviously as a result of the Trump administration gutting a number of programs that were meant to invest in rooftop solar and efficiency and electrification, while that has been an enormous loss to see that stuff shut down, what it did lay the groundwork for is the real use and leverage of our city's green bank. Finance New Orleans is a green bank. In fact, it was the first one in Louisiana. And what that means is, as a quasi-governmental agency, financing agency, it is able to leverage, for example, bonds that can then turn into revolving loan funds. And when we think about not just thinking about like solar and battery backup to keep people safe and healthy and reduce bills, first we got to think about the structures that we need to support that, proper rooftops. And a number of years after Ida, there were still blue roofs. There were still tarps on roofs. And we couldn't possibly invest in weatherization and efficiency before we address that, right? So we need to be leveraging the Finance New Orleans. The City Council has an opportunity right now to, as we're going into budget season, to think about how we can leverage that agency to make sure that everybody has access to fortified rooftops, to energy efficiency, to residential solar, to building out the region's first community solar, which is going to be really important, especially for so many renters in our city who can't otherwise access programs like that. So I want us to be thinking about not just what are the solutions, but how can we also go for the dollars that we've left on the table. I'm going to say something that's challenging here. Louisiana has an opportunity to stop throwing money away, to stop throwing money at industries that are already doing very, very well in our state. And we need to have them pay toward the things that make this place livable. That's a possibility, but Louisiana needs to do that together. Right now, if we don't do it, our population is going to change. And that means our population is going to move northward and leave Louisiana altogether. So we've got to acknowledge the hard things and work together to keep our state livable. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you so much, Logan. Now I want to move to Jessica Dandridge. We've spent a lot of time working together on things like stormwater fee. Yeah, Steve, I know you knew I was going to say that. She's with the Water Collaborative. And my question to you, Jessica, is neighborhood-scale stormwater projects after long-term financing, what blended or community-driven models could make these durable?
Thank you, Joe. And yes, we spent a lot of time talking about fees, which I love talking about. Hello, everyone. Jessica Dandridge Smith. And just a little background before I answer Joe's question. The Water Collaborative is a community-based organization that's focused on building community-driven policy solutions to actualize water as a human right in a climate-unstable world. So we do work mainly on nature-based solutions, but we also work on water affordability, access, and quality, and also with Logan and others focusing on insurance so people can stay in their homes and make sure this is a thriving city. To Joe's question, we've been doing research on a stormwater fee that is fair and equitable and really democratizes drainage in the city of New Orleans and hopefully in other parishes for over close to 5 years now. We looked at over 80 different utilities and particularly focusing on Philadelphia and Baltimore, looking at what works and also what does not work. Within that, we did over a 10-part workshop series with over 200 locals ranging from ages 16 to 81 years old to understand what residents really want out of a fee. Within that, we also interviewed every single stakeholder at the City of New Orleans multiple times about what is feasible, what's practical, what are the gaps. And so what we've come from that is that, one, we need a fee where everyone pays into drainage. That's the only way forward. And maybe people in this room are not aware, maybe you are, but there are entities, particularly tax-exempt properties, some of them corporations, some of them state properties that do not pay into any of the tax base, but especially into drainage. So how do we find a way that those entities can fairly pay into the system? And over time, residents fairly pay, right? Because what we do as residents, if you own a home, is you pay taxes based on the value of your home, not based on the square footage or impervious surfaces on your home, i.e. what you're putting on the system that Sewage and Water Board has to manage. What makes our fee unique, though, is where it's going. Where is the money going? So we're advocating for the money to go into, I say, 5 different pots. One, of course, is to maintain and level out the system to help Sewage and Water Board pay for the existing and incoming catch basin systems that they just recently took on. And as well as figuring out how we can support the City of New Orleans, particularly the Office of Resilience and Sustainability, and any other parties that are involved in stormwater management. The second thing is investing in neighborhoods, right? We have to invest in, day-to-day flooding, everyday flooding. And while the levee system is being strengthened, which is amazing, what's happening inside the levee is not good. We did a recent poll and we found that over 62% of homeowners have experienced flooding more than once this past year in 2024. And that affects if people are staying in their businesses and their homes and if they're willing to move to other places. So we have to address that. The other thing is focusing on green space and trees, right? We lost almost 80% of our tree canopy post-Katrina, and we have to replace those trees. I think that's pretty much a given, and the City Council has already approved that reforestation plan, which is great, and we did get some initial investment from U.S. Forest Service, but unfortunately, again, that was taken away from us, but we can still use the funding from a fee to leverage that. The other 2 areas that I'm most excited about is workforce development. To me, based on this panel and the folks in the audience, we are the Silicon Valley of water. I go to a lot of places. I do panel and speaking engagements all over the country. And as what was mentioned earlier by Colonel is that people look to us with envy. They see the work that we do. They see that we are doing amazing things, and we should be lifting that up, not only within the individuals on this stage, but our youth coming up. They should be involved in STEM. They should know that they could become planners, engineers, architects, geologists, whatever you need to be a part of this world, or just an educator. So that's the other area. And so workforce development, working with schools, working with universities to figure out how do we get as many of our youth involved in that sector. And then finally is really focusing as well on, how do we lift up the insurance issue, right? Because when I've been working on insurance as well as Logan, the insurance companies are very blunt. We are raising insurance rates as well as FEMA because the risk is too high in Southeast Louisiana. Our homes are older, they're not fortified. We also have, again, neighborhood flooding we have to address. So how do we use the funding as a seed fund to kind of lift up the city and look into other forms of insurance, not just our homeowners and flood, but looking at parametric insurance, for example. That's I could probably sit up here and talk about parametric for another hour. I'm not going to do that, but I'm happy to answer questions and guide you to the right direction. But there's another form of insurance that can actually support people right after a storm as well as the city, and that is a way to, again, ensure you have direct investment into your communities. Essentially, the funding from a stormwater fee, the plan that I and the community in New Orleans created, allows for us to not only invest in the existing and new infrastructure, but it allows for people to stay here and continue to make the city as amazing as it should be, and it was always intended to be. So the point of the fee is a financing structure, but it's also about a rising tide raises all ships. That's how we looked at the plan, and that's what myself, Joe, and others on this panel have worked on for some time.
Oh, thank you so much, Jessica, with that response. And now I'd like to go to Steve Nelson. I think I can call you a friend after all these years, right? Me and Steve spend a lot of time together, out at construction sites. Usually when it's flooding, we get a bad storm. I've got you on speed dial. I dial him. Steve, are you pumping? You know. So we just went through evolution where we transferred from the Department of Public Works all the minor drainage over to Sewer and Water Board. So they've got a handle on that, and I think within the city, DPW, we still have ditch drainage, and that's a problem that we're going to have to fix one day here in the city. So with that, Steve, Swebno, the board faces daily repair needs while also planning for 50-year threats. Where could catalytic capital make the biggest difference right now for the board?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. I would absolutely call you friend. And when Joe calls and it's raining, I just answer the phone with, "Yes, Joe, the pumps are on." And yeah, so Steve Nelson, I'm the General Superintendent of the Sewerage and Water Board. I'm not from New Orleans because I cannot answer one question, that being, where did you go to school? My wife and I have lived here on and off for the course of the last 20 years, and this is home for us. And this is a place where we've chosen to move back from Spokane, Washington, to raise our family, because this is a city that is good for raising a family. It's a place that is special, and it's one that everyone here on this panel, and I imagine everyone in the audience, is deeply invested in protecting. And your question about funding and how to fund different programs is a nuanced and complicated one, and it's one that touches on there's a number of different components. You mentioned the consolidation that took place in January of this year, and that's related to funding. In 1991, a millage failed, and so the management and operations of the drainage system of New Orleans split in 1992, and so the Department of Public Works was responsible for the catch basins and every pipe under 3 feet in diameter, and then the Sewerage and Water Board maintained the responsibility for every pipe over 3 feet in diameter, the canals, and the pumps. And if that sounds complicated, it's because it is. And it lends itself to a lot of challenges because a drainage system, the water doesn't care. It falls, it hits the street, it gets into the catch basin, and if it can't get from the catch basin to the discharge of our pump, then there's an issue within the system as a whole. So being able to consolidate is critical. And we've talked about many, many times, every interview I generally do, we can handle an inch of rain in the first hour and a half inch every hour thereafter. And I see people nodding and repeating that as I'm saying it in the audience. And the reality is that weather patterns are shifting. We don't see on average more rain in a given year. We take about 62 inches of rain a year, which is a lot. That is a lot of rain. And the challenge is becoming more and more frequently that we're seeing those shots of rain in 2 and 3 hour increments. So it's not a 24-hour rainstorm that drops 14 inches of rain on us over the course of a full day. It's that 2 or 3 hour rainstorm that drops 6 to 8 inches on us that overwhelms the catch basins, the lateral lines, and then eventually as it reaches the pumps, it starts to overwhelm the pumps. So there's a multi-part answer to that question, and it starts with programs like SELA, and SELA is a prime example of leveraging federal dollars against local match to maximize that impact from the federal government. Because the reality is, and you've heard it here from the various folks talking, New Orleanians can't afford to pay more out of their pockets. Insurance is high. The water bills are expensive. Energy is high. Inflation, it's a reality. So every dollar that we can bring from outside the city is one that we don't have to look to our customers to try and fund for us. And SELA is an excellent example of leveraging those dollars for big picture projects. Katrina really kicked that federal program into action. And that's about $1 billion worth of investment on projects like the canal, the underground canal running down Napoleon. You can drive 2 city school buses, or excuse me, 2 city RTA buses down that canal. That's the size of an underground river that we have to have in order to move these massive amounts of water. Another program that's coming online here in the next couple of weeks is our Power Complex program. So the Sewage and Water Board, if you didn't know it, we are actually a 4-utility provider: water, sewer, stormwater, and then we make our own power and have for 120 years, because about half of the pumps that drain the old part of the city, and that represents about 60% of our capacity, run on a flavor of power that you don't get out of a socket. It's AC, but it's 25 hertz, and I won't get into the nerdiness of it. As an engineer, I love the details. But we've been making this power for over 100 years, and one of the key turbines, in fact, one that is running today, powering pumps, is so old that I am told Thomas Edison's name is on the commissioning documents. And as special and unique as a city this is, I very much look forward to having the nameplate off of that thing in a glass case somewhere downtown and retiring that piece of equipment. And that's going to happen with this Power Complex project. Because in addition to that turbine, even when we have twice as much power as we need, it's still coming from a dozen different sources. So this Power Complex is going to consolidate that. It's going to make it take us from having a dozen different sources of power, each one with its own mode of failure, and it's going to simplify that decision-making process. Because the pump operators, there was a story on CNN this week that I would love for folks to check out, because it tells the story of those folks that were manning those pump stations. It is a complicated process. And if we can get that consolidated and simpler, we can save minutes, many minutes, from the time that the rain starts to fall to the time that we get a pump turned on. And for us, that's huge. When you're taking 6 inches of rain in 2 hours, 15 minutes can be the difference between keeping a street dry and having street level flooding. And to touch on the funding component, that program leverages 9 different sources of funding, which my deputy superintendent never wants to see again. But that's the sort of creativity that it takes, whether it's the state, the city has been an incredible partner on this. The fair share funding. Mayor Cantrell's first term put together that fair share agreement that brought in tax dollars from visitors to our city. We have about 19 million people that visit this city every single year because it's New Orleans. This is a global city. This is a place people want to come. They want to visit it and experience it. And they utilize the infrastructure, just like our customers who live here 24/7 do. And so getting some of that funding back for infrastructure support has been huge. And not only this Power Complex project, but the next piece that I'll talk about here in a second. And also state partners, federal partners. But those are 2 big picture sea change type of projects that we have going on. And then moving into consolidation, it's the management of and cleaning of the system, the small diameter system that after the Power Complex, I believe will have the single greatest effect on our customers on a block by block, address by address situation. Everybody knows the locations. Chef and Downman, Carrollton down by Willow. You know those locations, and I've got news for you. Each and every one of those is multiple feet above the canal level when it rains hard. It's not about the pumps being on. It's about the water getting to the canal and getting into the pumps. And so having that consolidated under the Sewage and Water Board, and again, the funding piece is critical, and that fair share funding is the foundation upon which that maintenance is based. And we have to get to a place where we're maintaining 20% of the system a year, because as it's been, Joe's had to carve up an increasingly smaller pie to be able to maintain that. So now that it's under our auspices, we have the ability and the responsibility to handle that. And I'm frankly very excited about where we're headed with that. And it's those small things, the mundane O&M, that's going to make as big a difference as the SELA program or the Power Complex or any other huge program that we have. It's that day-to-day O&M, keeping it up and reporting on it. And that ties into green infrastructure, as Jessica mentioned. All of these pieces together create a system that can handle more than an inch in the first hour and a half inch every hour thereafter. But we have to get to a place where we're executing that correctly. And funding like a stormwater fee that brings those nonprofits into the fold. 40% of our assessed value in the city is associated with nonprofits, folks that do great work. And also that benefit from the system, but because all of our drainage is paid for through millages, through taxes, they're not contributing financially to the system, whether it's green infrastructure or any of the gray infrastructure that we have. So those are the things, whether it's federal, state, local funding, we've got to be able to turn over every single rock that we can, which is becoming increasingly difficult in this environment. But if we can show the power complex, the vision for that started 6, 7 years ago. It was not decades. Now, it's been decades in the making, but if you can start a program, show people the vision, you can bring those funding sources together, and we'll definitely get my deputy superintendent some help in managing 9 or 10 funding sources. But that's what we've got to do so that we don't straddle our customers with that additional cost.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Stephen. I mean, Stephen, his job is pumping water. My job is trying to keep the water as long as I can to get to those pumps. And that's the problem. And here at the city, just running the infrastructure from the city for the city of New Orleans since 2018. And through our Office of Resilience and Sustainability, we've got multiple projects that just do that. When you talk about Pontilli, Hagan Lafitte, St. Bernard, St. Anthony Green Street, Mirabou Water Garden, Dillard Wetlands, all of those projects, the intent is through water detention, capturing water, bioswales, rain gardens. We want to capture as much water as we can. I think right now, Andy, you have to get me straight. It's probably 50, 60 million gallons of water we can capture when these projects are complete. We capture that water and it slowly drifts back in so Steve and the board can pump that water when we have to back into the lake. So it's a partnership between all of us here on this panel, and we just have to keep working. But you know, the main thing about every project that we do here in the city is through community input, community ideas on what we can and cannot do when we do those community outreach meetings before we go into construction and start building these projects. So with this, I'd like to offer questions to all the panelists, and you can chime in as required. Public money won't be enough. What financing innovations, be it loan funds, catalytic capital, blended models, excite you the most for scaling energy, coastal, and water infrastructure? I'll start with you, Amanda.
All right. So most of our there is some kind of a biting bug up here with me. Our coastal work to date has largely been funded. Well, CPRA has implemented hundreds of millions of dollars of restoration projects, and a lot of the funding comes from disasters. So that's something we have to keep in mind, is that we have to get out of this disaster cycle and come up with some innovative funding mechanisms. The other thing that we know is that when it comes to coastal restoration, time is money. So the longer we have to wait to implement projects, the costs skyrocket. So we have to figure out how to bring in and diversify our funding sources so we can move more quickly. And as I was talking about earlier, if you really want to attract diverse funding and private capital, you have to have a coastal program that people have confidence in investing in, and that is stable, and that is not a political football. So that's something that we have a responsibility in making sure stays, and we stay the course with our coastal program. And then once we get that kind of capital, some of the innovative things that we have been thinking about for years and would like to see happen are like environmental impact bonds, where you can pay for success, and investors can have a relatively secure investment and also be doing good, sustainable investment and have the ability to make some profit off of that. And those are the types of things we could do to make things move more quickly and bring in more funding, because the BP dollars run out in 15 years. And
Amen to that. Logan, your thoughts?
Sure. I mentioned one already, really actually leveraging Finance New Orleans, which is an incredible entity that I think not enough people know about or see the work that they're doing. But I think we need to ask both corporations and nonprofits to pay their fair share. We've heard that phrase before, but something I said before, we need to look to the entities that are causing much of the challenges here and who haven't paid in an appropriate amount. We need to ask people to have some skin in this game. And by people, I mean both corporations and large organizations that haven't. And then, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you.
Okay, Steve.
Thank you. Yes, financing, I mean, there are opportunities for public-private partnerships that we've looked at. Since we do generate a lot of power and have backup power generation, there are increasingly opportunities there where we can partner with Entergy or others to provide power and take in income from that. Also, I would add there's the concept of a penny saved is a penny earned. And so one of the things that I didn't really touch on with the Power Complex project and some of our initiatives with this consolidation of drain line cleaning is that if we can get ahead of the curve and get from a reactive to proactive stance, we can reduce our O&M costs and essentially flex our budget. We can stretch the dollars that we do have. So there are opportunities out there for us, and you just have to be increasingly creative in the environment that we have right now, and we are working to do that.
Yeah, Steve stole my answer there. On the public-private partnerships, I think is really a great opportunity going forward. And what I would ask for the panel and the businesses and even the audience members is look for those compelling opportunities and bring them to us. And so we're not postured to go find them. And so we need help for those to come to us and present themselves as opportunities, because we need authority and funding to do what we need to do. And like anything, that sometimes that funding's not enough to do what we really want to do. And what we really want to do is give the total project completion. However, if we have those opportunities where our stakeholders, our NGOs, or even our private business owners that come to us, we need that conduit. And I think that's really what we would ask for is the opportunity to work through that. Now, this is fairly new for the federal government. It's existed for a while, but we haven't seen a lot of usage. There has been one or two successful, right, which obviously is still is a new system, but test us, bring it forward, and give us those opportunities to see how it works.
Jessica?
Yes, so I'm thinking in 3 levels, so local, state, and federal, because we actually work at all levels of government. So locally, I mentioned the stormwater fee, obviously, and I didn't mention how much it would generate in our plan the first year. So the first year, we're anticipating a generation of roughly $50 million, which is quite a bit considering the city has struggles making $1 million sometimes. So if we're able to generate $50 million, we can fund a lot of the work that we're talking about, and that could be expanded depending on how we structure the fee system. I also want to uplift FANO, because one of the things we work with them on within the plan was also green debt financing and green banks as well, so that way homeowners have access to get green infrastructure on their property, and they don't have to, if they are not allowed to get financing through the community adaptation program, they can actually get financing through FANO to improve their home, and again, that could potentially support them later on in life. On the statewide, we actually are the Urban Waters Partnership Program ambassadors for the EPA, and so we work to connect all federal partners on nature-based solutions, stormwater management, water quality. And so we're currently working with multiple stakeholders right now to figure out regional planning, to actually, how do we leverage our region together, right? I think we're still exploring that, but it's been a conversation for quite some time. Jefferson Parish is right, 5 minutes away. St. Bernard Parish is 10 minutes away, but we don't work together. But if we are able to leverage financing, we can do bigger and better projects. And that's why we see other cities who have massive projects. It's because they're working at a regional scale. So we're exploring that. And also we're working with LDH and LDEQ. We actually just got a win on financing because they just expanded financing for green infrastructure and nature-based solutions on their portfolios, which is really exciting. And then at the federal level, I'll end is that we've been working with congressmen on expanding SRFs overall. And so unfortunately, under the Big Beautiful Bill, we did not have a win. SRFs were potentially reduced around 80 to 83%. Potentially, I think it's still not clear about the full number, but If we continue, we have to keep advocating because I think people don't know what state revolving funds are. You hear it, I'm just saying state revolving funds, it probably means nothing to you, but it finances how our utilities move. Sewage and Water Board has SRFs. Every utility you have has an SRF. And if that money is cut, that puts a lot of the work that we have at risk, but also working with congressmen to not just say, hey, there's drinking water, yes, or sewage, but also more money for nature-based solutions, more money for climate adaptation and risk reduction.
Thank you so much. This is for the panel, and we're getting tight on time. If you could ask philanthropy or private investors to change one thing to make dollars more impactful, what would it be? Amanda?
I don't know that I'm ready for this one. For them to change one thing? I don't know. No, I'm gonna pass it. I was not prepared for that one, and I can think of what I want to change, but I don't know what I want private investment to change right now. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'll come back to me.
Okay. I'm going to answer philanthropy. And it might sound weird for someone who runs a policy organization to say this, but I would like to see philanthropy invest in infrastructure, in things. So often, just getting a project off the ground, like a community solar project, of which there are 60 megawatts in development right now. This is a big deal in New Orleans right now. But the problem is getting that kick in that first round of money for the build out, the planning, and so forth. That philanthropy needs to begin to invest in. I'm not saying that philanthropy needs to build all of it, but that beginning seed money is really an opportunity that we're not seeing philanthropy do. Philanthropy is investing in policy, great. They're investing in direct service, charitable giving, but not those kinds of investments that I think could really move the needle.
I have my answer. I'm ready now. Thank you so much. I just needed like 10 seconds, okay? And we've seen some really good examples of this with philanthropy, and me being a product of 17 years, invested. But I think that we need more long-term investment so that people can do community building, relationship building, trust building. I don't think you can ever have enough of that. It feels like it's becoming shorter and harder to come by and find. And so I think that type of long-term, sustainable, really community ingrained, like becoming integral in communities is something that is going to bring systemic change, which is what we're all talking about and what we need, but we have to have that longer term investment.
Stephen?
This is a challenging one for myself as a public utility as well, just to be perfectly transparent, but I think there's an opportunity for more collaboration and understanding of the engineering side. We have a lot of resources and understanding of modeling and what happens with models. And if we can work more closely, and I know our new executive director, Randy Heyman, has a lot of experience working with a wide variety of groups, and I'm really excited to be partnering with him to work with groups like Jessica and the Water Collaborative and others to be able to leverage the limited resources that they have. I mean, I think that's the answer, is I'd like to see more resources for nonprofits.
Yeah, and we're getting tight on time. I just got a sign that said 5 minutes, so I'm going to start rapidly speeding it up. But for you, Colonel, I mean, it was brought up when we talk about private investment, but for the Corps engineers in the United States, in the 50s, after the war, we did a lot of building in this country. I mean, and I know it would be a happy day if the administration told you, hey, Corps engineer, go do your thing and rebuild the infrastructure in the United States of America. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a, what the biggest risk we face is aging infrastructure. We did a massive amount of construction post-World War II. We saw a huge, big benefit cost ratios, right? And so for the dollar invested, we were realizing multitudes of that dollar. And over time, that's been difficult because we're now fighting for pennies. But we have an obligation to ensure that we're good stewards for your dollars, your taxpayer dollars, and you want to see a positive return on that. And so those opportunities are less. But what we're seeing is the replacement of that infrastructure, right? And so that's a harder sell to people when you start talking about replacing something that's aging. Because what we found, the chief engineers looked at every district commander and said, you better get your costs right. And all of you, have, even at your personal level up to the federal government, the last 5 years have seen significant cost growth. And so we're trying to do solid, good cost analysis to ensure that what we're going to provide today, 5 years, 20 years, we're coming in on the mark. When we tell you it's going to cost this much, we have an obligation to make sure we get that right. The opportunities, I think, even piggyback on the last answer and last question is, where do we need help? And so my engineers are focused on getting the cost right. We need help on the benefits. And so we've seen significant cost growth, but I'm not seeing benefit growth. And I think we're missing that capture. I think we're missing, how do I model generational employment? When you talk about keeping people in the city, how do I model tax base to a parish? That's what we need help with, because I think we're missing it. I think we're missing that dollar return, and we don't have the knowledge. We're great with numbers, right? We are very professional, but I think we need your help in showing how those benefits and nonprofits can grow together to provide better infrastructure for the entire city in South Louisiana.
Jessica, we got about a couple minutes.
I apparently have 5 seconds. I will say really quickly to what the philanthropy can invest in. I think for me, as someone who does policy, we work statewide. All the issues up here are not a disagreement. Whether it's a red district or a blue district, no one disagrees that we need levees, we need investment in our coast, need investment in our infrastructure and systems, and particularly around the Mid-Barataria sediment diversion. It was widely popular. And so I would say we need civic engagement and we need voter engagement. We need voter education and with that, not just education, but people need to show up at the polls and say, I actually care about this and I need my representative to care about it too. Because I'm seeing a gap. There's tons of experts who are here on this panel, but every single panel I know quite a few people who are incredibly intelligent that have done the research and the data, but we don't see that reflected all the time in every single, whether it's local, municipal, regional, or statewide representative. So that needs to be one, and I would say two, we really need to be investing in, again, workforce development, in my opinion. Our young people are being left behind. Particularly in the South. Obviously, we talk about it in New Orleans context, but again, we have Southern partners ranging from Texas to the Carolinas. Our young people, with AI, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? How do we expect them to be productive members of society? And I think this is the way forward, because we will always need infrastructure. And as AI is coming on board, it requires even more infrastructure that we do not currently have. So I think we need to be moving our young people in that direction, and I'd like to see more investment there.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And just on your comments, Colonel, like you say, those estimates, project estimates, are very important, because if you miss the mark, our challenge is inflation. Our challenge is supply chain right now. Getting those materials and products we need to do construction. I appreciate that. Today, the panel, was fun. Hey, New Orleans' future depends on three pillars: restoring and protecting our coast, right? Modernization and decarbonization of energy systems, and managing stormwater in ways that protect every neighborhood. Hey, folks in the audience, look around. All the people up here, we kind of put these packages together and make things happen. So, you're the community or businesses, reach out to us and, give us your ideas so we can change our life and our neighborhoods here in the city of New Orleans. Thank you so much for participating today.